Hello. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Thomas Hobbes reading for this week. I'm identifying this video as Hobbes' account of human nature. What it really is Hobbes' account of how humans interact with each other when they're just left in their natural state. So the strategy for this video is going to involve me reading through various passages from the reading and expanding on what they say. When we do this, we'll see that a picture emerges. Nature has made men so equal in the faculties of the body and mind, as that though there be found one man, sometimes manifestly stronger in body or of quicker of mind than another, yet when all is reckoned together, the difference between man and man is not so considerable as that one man can thereupon claim to himself any benefit to which another man may not pretend as well as he. For as to the strength of body, the weakest has the strength enough to kill the strongest, either by secret machination or by confederacy with others that are in the same danger with himself. So, here, the way I understand what Hobbes is presenting is the idea that physical strength is not enough to ensure that someone can't kill me and take my stuff. If we remember the passage and how it goes, the idea is that no matter how strong I am, that doesn't mean that other people won't be able to take things from me. So, moving on to the next passage, here there is a long aside in the beginning that I think the passage makes more sense if we cut it out. So I'll do that. And, as to the faculties of the mind, I find yet a greater equality among men than that of strength. For prudence is but experience, which equal time equally bestow on all men in those things they equally apply themselves unto. That which may perhaps make such equality incredible is but a vain conceit of one's own wisdom, which almost all men think they have in greater degree than the vulgar, that is, than all men but themselves and a few others whom, by fame or for concurring with themselves, they approve. For such is the nature of men, that whosoever they may acknowledge, many others to be more witty, or more eloquent, or more learned, yet they will hardly believe there be many so wise as themselves. For they see their own wit at hand, and other men's at a distance. But this proves rather that men are in that point equal than unequal. For there is not ordinarily a greater sign of equal distribution of anything than that every man is contented with his share. So here, what Hobbes is arguing for is equality among people based on their intelligence as well. So we see that in the first sentence. And as the faculties of the mind, I find yet a greater equality among men than that of strength. So, returning to Hobbes' picture of the world, from the first passage we pulled the idea that physical strength is not enough to ensure that someone doesn't kill me and take my stuff. Neither is being smart. And the reason for this is that according to Hobbes, people tend to be more equal than not in their intelligence. Continuing on. From this equality of ability arises a quality of hope in the attaining of our ends. And therefore, if any two men desire the same thing, which nevertheless they cannot both enjoy, they become enemies. And in the way to their end, which is principally their own conservation, and sometimes their delectation, only endeavor to destroy or subdue one another. And from hence it comes to pass that where an invader has no more to fear than another man's single power, if one plant, sow, build, or possess a convenient seat, others may probably be expected to come prepared with forces united to dispossess and deprive him, not only of the fruit of his labor, but also of his life or liberty. And the invader, again, is in the like danger of another. Again, men have no pleasure, but on the contrary, a great deal of grief, in keeping company where there is no power able to overawe them all. For every man looks that his companion should value him at the same rate as he sets upon himself, and upon all signs of contempt or unwavering naturally endeavors, as far as he dares, which among them that have no common power to keep them in quiet is far enough to make them destroy each other, to extort a greater value from his contemners by damage, and from others by the example. Okay, so we see Hobbes as painting a fairly bleak picture of the world, returning to this picture from these last two passages. We get that under these conditions, we can never feel safe, regardless of where we are, and we can't build or keep anything. If we remember back to the passages, part of the reason here is because if I build something, other people will want it, and they will take it from me. And if they're not powerful enough to do that, they'll band together until they are powerful enough. So there's no reason for me to try to build or keep anything, because if I do, other people will just try to take it from me. This is a very bleak picture, and as I said in the previous video, it follows from Hobbes' experience in the English Civil War. Okay, moving on. Hereby, it's manifest that during the time men live without a common power to keep them all in awe, they are in that condition which is called war, and such a war as is of every man against every man. So we see the picture that Hobbes was just presenting, now presented in a single sentence, right? It's during this time that he's presenting that when we don't have a common power to keep us all controlled, all we do is battle with each other. And this he calls a state of war. For war consists not in battle only, or the acting of fighting, but in a tract of time wherein the will to contend by battle is sufficiently known, and therefore the notion of time is to be considered in the nature of war as it is in the nature of weather. For as the nature of foul weather lies not in a shower or two of rain, but in the inclination thereunto of many days together, so the nature of war consists not in actual fighting, but in the known disposition thereunto during all the time there is no assurance to the contrary. All other time is peace. So here Hobbes is making an interesting point when he's talking about the weather. He's making a comparison between war and the weather. And what he's saying is, look, the battling is not so much the worst part of war. What the worst part of war is never knowing when another battle is coming. And because of that, you can't ever feel or be safe. So here he's making a distinction between war, which is the state that we're in when we don't have someone to rule over us, in peace, which, as we'll see, is, at least in part, something that follows when we have someone to rule over us. So returning to Hobbes' picture of the world, the next piece is that the state that we're in that's outlined in the three previous points is called war. And this takes place when we don't have a common power ruling over us. Moving on to the next passage. Whatsoever, therefore, is consequent to a time of war, where every man is enemy to every man, the same is consequent to the time wherein men live without other security than what their own strength and their own invention shall furnish them withal. In such condition, there is no place for industry, because the fruit thereof is uncertain, and consequently no culture of the earth, no navigation nor use of the commodities that may be imported by sea, no commodious building, no instruments of moving and removing such things as require much force, no knowledge of the face of the earth, no account of time, no arts, no letters, no society, and which is worst of all, continual fear and danger of the violent death, and the life of man, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So this last sentence here, and the life of man, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, is a very famous quotation from Hobbes. This is something that's often repeated, and it's often identified as his view of the world. Now, to be clear, it is only his view of the world when we don't have someone ruling over us that provides us with peace. But nonetheless, we see in Hobbes' picture of the world how things fall together. So remember, physical strength is not enough to ensure that someone doesn't kill me and take my stuff, right? Because we're actually all much closer together in physical strength than it may first seem. Neither is being smart. So, at least according to Hobbes, all men are fairly similar in their intelligence. Whether we agree with this or not, that's the claim that he's making. And so also because of that, my intelligence can't protect me from others. So, under these conditions, we can never feel safe, regardless of where we are, and we can never build or keep anything. Alright? In this state, he calls being at war, and it takes place when we don't have a common power over us, leading to peace. And as we saw, life under these conditions is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Alright. His last point also, which I'm cutting out of this video because it's kind of long and confusing, is that all of this aligns with our experience. So he goes back through and shows that his picture of the world also follows from our experience of the world. All right. Now, moving on to his solution. The passions that incline men to peace are fear of death, desire of such things as are necessary to commodious living, and hope by their industry to obtain them. And reason suggests convenient articles of peace upon which men may be drawn to agreement. These articles are they which otherwise are called the laws of nature. The final cause, end, or design of men who naturally love liberty and dominion over others is the introduction of that restraint upon themselves in which we see them live in commonwealths in the foresight of their own preservation and of a more contented life thereby, that is to say, of getting themselves out from that miserable condition of war, which is necessarily consequent, as has been shown, to the natural passions of men, where there is no visible power to keep them in awe and tie them by fear of punishment to the performance of their covenants. So, what Hobbes is saying here is that, look, people are drawn to peace. And this means that they want to be restrained by something. So if we remember his picture of the world, when we're just left to our own devices, really all we can do is battle with each other. We can't build anything. We can't build a society. But because we're drawn to peace, we want to be restrained from this condition. Okay, now we get Hobbes' solution for how this happens. The only way to erect such a common power as may be able to defend them from the invasion of foreigners and the injuries of one another, and thereby to secure them in such sort as that by their own industry and by the fruits of the earth they may nourish themselves and live contentedly, is to confer all their power and strength upon one man, or upon one assembly of men that may reduce all their wills by plurality of voices unto one will, which is as much as to say, to appoint one man or assembly of men to bear their person, and every one to own and acknowledge himself to be author of whosoever he that so bears their person shall act or cause to be acted in those things which concern the common peace and safety, and therein to submit their wills, every one to his will, and their judgment to his judgments. So what we see here is Hobbes' solution. He says the only way to erect such a common power as may be able to defend people from the invasion of foreigners and the injuries of one another is to put all of their power into one person. And the idea here is that by putting all of our power into one person and agreeing with whatever that person chooses to do, then we can be protected from our natural state. This is more than constant or concord. It's a real unity of them all in one and the same person, made by covenant of every man with every man, in such manner as if every man should say to every man, I authorize and give up my right of governing myself to this man or this assembly of men, on the condition that you give up your right to him and authorize all his actions in like manner. This done, the multitude, so united in one person, is called a commonwealth. In Latin, civitas. Okay? So here, what we see is Hobbes giving his account of how it is we arrive at the commonwealth, right? So we all agree to consent in one person and authorize to give up our rights of governing ourselves to this person or to this assembly of people on the condition that that this person puts us in a place where we can be protected. All right, and when this is done, we call this a commonwealth. This is the generation of the great Leviathan, or rather, to speak more reverently of that mortal God, to which we owe under the immortal God our peace and defense. For by this authority given him by every particular man in the commonwealth, he has the use of so much power and strength conferred on him, that by terror thereof he is enabled to form the wills of them all to peace at home and mutual aid against their enemies abroad. So the idea here is that when we confer this power onto one person, this person has so much power and strength that they're able to use this to protect us from each other at home and against our mutual enemies abroad. And in him consists the essence of the commonwealth, which to define it is one person, of whose acts a great multitude, by mutual covenants one with another, have made themselves every one the author, to the end he may use the strengths and means of them all as he shall think expedient for their peace and common defense. And he that carries this person is called sovereign, and said to be sovereign power, and everyone besides his subject. So we see the final idea, and what Hobbes' solution is to the way that the world is. It's to identify someone as a sovereign, and then through mutual agreement between all of us, we give this person all of the power, and then they use the power to protect us. So just to review Hobbes' picture of the world one last time. Physical strength is not enough to ensure that someone doesn't kill me and take my stuff. Neither is being smart. Under these conditions, we can never feel safe regardless of where we are, and we can never build or keep anything. So if we remember, because physical strength isn't enough to protect us, and neither is being intelligent, we're just in a constant state of war. And any time we try to build something or grow something, someone can just come along and take it, so we can never feel safe. And Hobbes calls this state being at war. And it takes place when we don't have a common power over us. Life under these conditions is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. All of this aligns with our experience, according to Hobbes. However, people are drawn to peace. We want peace, so we want to be restrained by something. And Hobbes' answer to what this thing is the sovereign. So that was a lot of information, and it's fairly complicated, but I hope that it's made a little bit more sense of the reading, the first part of the reading for this week.